Right. Greetings, Africa. It's quite interesting. We have a trending man right now on the global stage, especially in Africa, and he's none other than Ibrahim Traoré, the president of Burkina Faso. And he has really led quite a number of initiatives that I think if those initiatives were to be replicated in other African countries, they would make a difference. But still, the question remains, why is it that other African presidents are not standing with him and they are also not trying to replicate what he is doing, regardless of those things showing results and being loved? Even we have seen citizens from other countries, they are praising him and they wish that he was their own president. So from my small research that I've done, I found some quite interesting reasons, which I'm sure some of you, if not all of you, are going to resonate with. So the first reason is dependence on foreign aid and debt. So as we all know, Africa is well indebted when it comes to the way we try to do our development. We are getting aid from other countries, particularly US, European Union, Britain, and everything. So in as much as you might find that, okay, what our fellow African president is doing is quite interesting and it's quite something that is loved or that can, develop Africa, they deliberately choose not to do so because that will be against the interests of the other countries that are sponsoring our African countries. But remember, this debt or this aid that is coming, the reason why the presidents are not willing to let it go and rather make Africa suffer at the expense, or rather enjoy those debts or those aid at the expense of the majorities, because most of it is being pocketed into these elites' accounts, right? So usually that who is funding you is the one who controls the game, right? So because of that reason, of course, African presidents will never or are so reluctant to follow the Traoré way of doing things. Then secondly, the elite capture and neocolonial alliances. So many African elites, including presidents, are deeply tied to foreign interests, right? For example, they have business deals, military training, political backing, or personal wealth held abroad. We know very well that most of our African presidents, they invest abroad. Instead of investing in their own country, they put their wealth abroad so that when they get out of power, you will not be able to hold them accountable, and you will not be able to touch their wealth soon, as soon as they leave power. So they cannot, for example, let's say I'm the president of a certain country in Africa, and all my assets are in the UK or in the US. The moment I started doing things which are against the interests of US, of course, we know what is going to happen. They might actually liquidate and just make my wealth disappear, or rather even expose me. So I play dumb, and me and the elites, those who are around me as the president or all the policymakers, of course, some of them I will be in a position to control them. So they don't say much. But yes, the truth is I'm also safeguarding my own self-interest. After all, that is politics, right? That's true politics. We cannot say there's any president who's not selfish. And also there's also fear of sanctions and isolation. We have seen this every time whenever any other African president try to do something, they are blamed that they are violating human rights, and this thing doesn't come as if they are being punished for something they've not done. They formulate something, then they frame something, then they impose sanctions. Then you ask yourself, like, okay, if the president is the one who is wrong, why imposing sanctions on the whole country, and the citizens at the end of everything are the ones that are going to suffer? So because of that, presidents sometimes they choose to just align with the West or the global giants so that they don't suffer from those sanctions. And of course, some sanctions, as I've said, they are not over the whole nation, but they may target some individuals. So some presidents, they know once they start that move, because they have wealth abroad, once those sanctions targets them, that's the end of it. So they try to avoid that, right? Then, fourthly, there's somehow a weak Pan-African weak Pan-African institutions. For example, we have the African Union and regional blocs like ECOWAS, IGAD, SADC. They lack unity and are heavily influenced by external donors. As I said, the one who is sponsoring is the one who determines how you operate. So even that, if right now, even the headquarters of African Union was sponsored to be built, not by African countries, but by other nations from abroad. And there was even a rumors. Okay, let me leave that alone. But yeah, that's what I'm talking about. So their decision making and the policies that they try to advance, they are mostly influenced by those who are funding them, right? So because now we lack such, we don't have one voice. If African institutions, Pan-African institutions were independent, right now they would be sitting down and like, okay, this is a model that is working. What Ibrahim Traoré is doing is working. Why can't we join together and take that model and move with it? In as much as it's against the global giants, political giants, but it's working in our context. Why can't we go with it? But you know what? There's no institution to be autonomous to enforce that. And unfortunately, we are going to remain how we are until I don't know when. So this undermines collective action and make it hard for leaders like Traore to find strong allies among their peers who would support systematic decolonization. So what we're talking about here is the decolonization of Africa. That's what Traore is doing. But unfortunately, it just sounds like it's decolonization of Burkina Faso. Other African countries are still held and they're still dancing to the imperialist drum. Then the fifth point is Traore came to power through military coup. We all know that, giving him room to bypass democratic constraints. So democratically elected leaders are under pressure to maintain political stability, to please diverse interest groups, and follow legal processes, which makes that pursuing radical reform could alienate influential domestic players like the military, business, or civil society. So in a democratic setup, it's very hard to implement quick actions or quick policies. Why? Because you have to have approval from a lot of litigating groups, social civil society groups and everything. Most of them which are also being funded from abroad. So you find that they are, in their ways of doing things, they say they are advancing our human rights and, common good, but that's not the case. They are advancing the imperialist agenda. So, and this thing called democracy, it delays things. In as much as people, you applaud it, that's the best way of governance. It is not, because it delays policies that are meant to be implemented. Number 6, security and military dependence. So most of our African countries, they don't have security, especially those countries that are especially from the ECOWAS bloc. We already know what is happening between Traore and the other 2 countries that left ECOWAS. Right now, they have issues there. So you find that in the Western African countries, there is a lot of insecurities from terrorists and whatever. And now, what happens is most of the armies or the military or the strategies that are helping in safeguarding those countries from terrorist attacks are from abroad. So still that compels African countries to remain aligned to the Western interest and the policies that they dictate on African countries. So for that reason, you find that Traore will remain isolated, and no matter how much good and desirable his ways of governance are, African leaders are not willing to replicate the same. Now, then, of course, we are talking about lack of political will or vision. Some African presidents simply lack the ideological commitments or courage to challenge the neo-colonial system, right? So others are contented with personal power, state capture, or short-term gains rather than risking everything to push for generational change. So as we know, democracy is only a matter of 4 years rather than 5 years. So you just know, when I get into power for the next 5 years, if I'm lucky enough to be elected for the second term, let's say 10 years, I cannot do much. So I'll just, gain what I can gain at the time being, and I don't care about the long-term thing, long-term effects of my leadership or of my regime or of my governance. So some of the leaders are in that same spirit. They just come, they get what they can get, and they leave. They are not even willing to commit to those to better ideologies or to risk their lives for the sake of the future of the nation. So because of these reasons, I've gotten to believe that most of African leaders will not align with Ibrahim Traoré, no matter how much his ideology is realistic and is likely to push Pan-Africanism ahead and development of Africa forward. So as we recapture our points, the first one I said, dependence of foreign aid, elite capture and neo-colonial alliances, fear of sanctions and isolation, weak Pan-African institutions, internal political risks, security and military dependence, lack of political will or vision. So, what is my final thought in all this? The Traoré way is not just a political strategy, it's a deep ideological commitment to liberation and Pan-Africanism. It comes with the risks, demands, sacrifices, and requires grassroots support which many leaders either lack or fear to build. Until African population intensify pressure for true sovereignty and unity, most leaders will continue to take safer, externally approved path, even if that means remaining in a neo-colonial system. Come to think of it, what do you think about it? Drop down a comment there. Thank you.